Hey guys, this is a Neverending Reader. I'm Brittany and welcome to my October wrap-up. So I'm going to go in no particular order, but in the month of October I did read Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo. This is part of the Grishaverse series. I know this is like the beginning of a duology, but like in my brain it's part of an entire series. So this follows a crew of like teenagers and they have to go on a heist, but there's like a little bit of magic in here. I wouldn't say that this is like high fantasy or anything. And I feel like everybody on BookTube knows like already what this is about, so I'm not going to sit here for the rest of my life and tell you, but I will tell you that this was a reread, and the second time around I enjoyed it even more than before, which, how is it possible? But it was. So yeah, I did read this, and I had a lovely time. I also read some middle grade this month, one being Go Eat Worms. This is a Goosebumps book, obviously. This was a really quick read. I think it was about a kid named Todd, and he's like obsessed with worms, and he's always playing like pranks on his sister about like worm stuff, like putting them in her hair and all that nasty stuff. But one day he like chops a worm in half in front of like all his other worms, and it like upsets the worms, and so he starts finding worms in his like food and his hat and all this stuff. For a Goosebumps book, I didn't love it as much as my other ones. Like, there was nothing super creepy about it. I usually have a pretty good time with Goosebumps books, but this one was just like, okay. As you guys know, I don't rate things on this channel, so I'm definitely not going to be rating this, but I would say for a kid in middle school, this would be an okay book, but for me, I didn't love it. I also read The School for Good and Evil, and I actually really like this one. So this is about a girl named Sophie and a girl named Agatha, and Sophie thinks she's going to be getting into this school for good because where Sophie and Agatha live, like on one night a year, kids between ages this and that can be like basically kidnapped and taken to the school for good and evil. And so Sophie is pretty sure she's going to be kidnapped by the schoolmaster and taken to the school for good, because she's definitely not evil, she thinks. And then she has a friend named Agatha, and Sophie is pretty certain that Agatha is going to be taken to the school for evil. However, they are taken, and instead of Sophie going to the school for good, she's actually taken to the school for evil, and Agatha is put in the school for good. And Sophie and Agatha just like can't comprehend this because they're like polar opposites, and Sophie's like traditionally good, like what you would see a hero like in a fairy tale. That would be like Sophie, but she's very conceited and stuff. So yeah, it was pretty interesting where this one took us. So yeah, thoroughly enjoyed this one. This is middle grade. I really loved it. I did have a couple problems with it, but I'm hoping they get sorted in the next book, which I do own. I also read Serious Moonlight by Jen Bennett. I read this literally with Chloe. I will link her channel down below, but Chloe stayed with me for like 10 days in October, and so we literally read this book together. Like, we each had a copy, and we wrote inside of it and tabbed it up, and then we gave each other our copy that we had written in. So I have a copy that Chloe wrote in, and she has mine. And it was just a super good experience. I feel like the experience of reading it together was actually better than the story. And for that reason, this will always be one of my favorite books. But this is about a girl named Birdie, and she starts working like the midnight shift in this hotel. And when she shows up at this hotel, there is a boy named Daniel working there. And she realizes that she definitely slept with Daniel however many weeks before this takes place and like ghosted him. And so it's kind of their like love story, and there's like a tiny little mystery in this, and I really enjoyed it. But yeah, just reading this with Chloe was like amazing because I don't read with anybody, nobody that I actually know in real life reads. So like having somebody sitting on the same couch right next to me reading the same thing was just, it was good. I also read a middle grade called The Doll in the Garden by Mary Downing Hahn. I will put a something right here if I'm not being lazy, but I can't find my copy of it right now. Basically, it was about a little girl who moves into this house, and when she gets there, the landlord is like super crabby, and she's like, don't go in my garden, and the little girl's like, I'm just gonna go in the garden. And so she goes in there with like a neighborhood friend and starts digging in the garden, and she finds like a box, and there's this like old porcelain doll inside the box, and the neighborhood friend's like, dude, that's haunted, and she's like, oh my god. And basically it's a middle grade story, so I know you guys can probably guess like from here on out that it's like a supernatural book. But either way, I really enjoyed reading it. It was a really quick read. It was like 140 pages, super fun, little ghost story, and I loved it. I also read In the Tallgrass by Stephen King, and I think maybe Joe Hill helped on that, and that is a novella that I read on Scribd. Basically, that one was about a brother and a sister who are like driving down the road, and for some reason they pull over and they can like faintly hear some kid like screaming for help, and they can hear that he's screaming for help like in this super tall grass, like the grass is so high that you can't see anything, and he's like, I'm lost. And so the brother and sister get out of the car and they like go to help him, but when they get into the grass they realize that they can't get out, so like the grass keeps shifting them and their voices are carrying and they like are getting lost. And it's a really short book, so I can't say anything else from there, but I thought it was really, really good, except it went down a pretty freaking gross route at the end, which was fine. It's like the Halloween season, embrace it or whatever, but it was like pretty sick, so maybe if you're like not into body horror, you should definitely check Goodreads for trigger warnings. Otherwise, I really liked it. And I believe the last book that I read was The Cabin at the End of the World, and I think that was by Paul Tremblay. I can't remember. It's actually on my Kindle, so I'll just check for you guys. Yes, it was The Cabin at the End of the World by Paul Tremblay. I think I read something by him many months ago, maybe even like a year and a half to 2 years ago, and I remember being excited about it, and then the ending let me down, which was the exact same case with this book. So this book follows a little girl and her dads, and they're like on a vacation in a cabin in the woods. Oh my god. But anyway, she's outside playing, and while she's outside, like some stranger walks up and he like starts striking up a conversation with her, and she's little, so she knows like this probably isn't right to be having a conversation with a stranger, but she carries on anyway because she thinks he's probably a good guy. And then basically the guy's like, oh yeah, my friends are like actually right there and we need to talk to your dads and it's super important. And what it boils down to is him and his friends are saying that this girl and her dads must make this impossible decision to save the world, otherwise literally everybody is going to die. And so for me, this book was pretty exciting the whole way through until the end, and I was like, okay, like, which is exactly what happened with his last book that I read. I think that one was called A Head Full of Ghosts, but the ending was just super underwhelming to me. I think I'm not going to read this author anymore because while I can see why other people like it, I need more of a plot twist to actually consider it a good book, I guess. I'm just turning into a book snob at this point, but yeah, didn't love that ending and it kind of like ruined the rest of the book for me. So yeah, that is what I read in the month of October. I probably would have read more, but Chloe and I were having like such a blast that I like didn't even consider reading. So I think 6 books is okay, even though like 2 of them were pretty short and one of them was a novella. I'm not bummed about it or anything. I'm not gonna hit my 100 goal on Goodreads, but it's fine, everything's fine, I don't care. I do actually care, but it's still fine. That about sums it up, and I was planning on merging this video with my TBR video, but I think at this point I've talked too long, so I guess you're just gonna get this video by itself. And I guess I will catch you in my next one, which will be 100% a TBR video. Bye guys.